right before you joined this meeting, you open up your email or your calendar and you clicked the Zoom link. And I want you to pretend that when you click that Zoom link, instead of Zoom popping up on your computer and putting you in this call with all of us, you somehow found yourself teleported back to the year 500 BC. You have no idea how it happened. You have no idea how you got there. You don't even know like what laws of the universe allow this to happen. But you open your eyes and it's 500 BC. And every single person around you is treating you like you're the dictator of the world, because you are. You realize that you were teleported back to the year 500 BC and somehow you became the dictator of the world. And there's a few more details. In addition to realizing that you became dictator of the world, you also realize that you are on one of 3 identical Earths. And you don't know, what's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen, but you do know for a fact, for sure, that in 2,521 years from now, in the year 2021, there is going to be a great war between these 3 Earths, and only one Earth is going to survive. The question is, what do you do as dictator of the world in the year 500 BC to best increase your Earth's chance of survival? And there's 3 constraints. Are you following so far?
I follow so far. This is the most outstanding question I've ever been asked. Go on.
Thank you. So the first constraint is you know everything you know today, but you can't bring anything back with you, and you can't prep anything. Like, you only know what you know in this moment, in this instant, and you can't bring anything back. The second constraint is everyone's treating you like you're dictator of the world, but the year is 500 BC and you're limited accordingly. You can assume that, for example, if you say something like, how is that message going to get to the other side of the world before you die? You can assume like you can start anywhere on the planet that you want. You can assume you speak the local language. You can assume you're not going to like die of diseases that no longer exist today, that your body's not immune to. But you're operating those constraints, and you only have the rest of your life to set your plans in motion. The final constraint is that the war is inevitable. You don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know where these other 3 Earths are. There's no way to prevent it. You can assume diplomacy is not an option. And you have to somehow set your plans in motion before you die.
Man, all right. Okay, so it feels like 2 things are pretty important if you're like setting civilization. It's like you want a culture of, like scientific inquiry, so that people are like building things and like coming to a true understanding of how the world works faster than the other Earths are coming to a true understanding of how the world works. And then the other is like societal stability, where I don't think dictatorship, like it would, it would be great while I was in charge. But I think I would probably, like, first things first is we'd want to set up like a good system for like how things would be democratic in like a stable way after like I died. Like, I think that would probably be pretty important, because like it's pretty rare that democracies try to take over the world, but it's like not uncommon for dictatorships to try to take over the world. And then that just really sets things back. I mean, this is one of those classic situations. Have you ever read A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court? Okay, so you would love it. Based on the question you just asked, like the first thing you should do when you get off this call is go and read this book, because it's just so delightful. But it's a similar, someone for inexplicable reasons jumps back in time and like establishes his way in the world. It really just shines a light on like, he just knows all these things, like how radio waves work and how to like make one from scratch. And all these thought experiments shine a light on like, man, I don't know anything. Someone, you like start trying to explain to the people around you, like, no, there's these things called waves and we can use them for like long distance communication. And the people are like, okay, how do you do it? I'd be like, boy, I don't know. Do we have any like lodestones that seem to point north? I think I might need 1 or 2 of those. I think I would be pretty disappointed in how unproductive things were there. But, I would probably try to get a little community like Pythagoras's community of people who are into asking questions about math, and like give them a lot of the facts that I did know, a lot of the ways that I do know it relates to the world, hopefully trying to like get a little bit of momentum of like skepticism and inquiry that like persists longer thereafter. Because if you can have like a stable civilization surrounding a group that's like inquisitive and skeptical, they're probably going to figure out like how the world works and then be able to build stuff. And so like your main risk is that the whole civilization around them is like unstable because there's just like constant war or something like that. Boy, am I not the right person to answer that, but democracy feels kind of like the most important piece of that puzzle. So not necessarily the greatest answer to the greatest question, but I definitely appreciate the level of detail that went into that. And maybe I'll mull it over further and reach out if I come up with a better answer.
I love that answer. I've never thought about how, like, I've thought about the idea of like you need to establish some sort of like intellectual community that can really seriously kind of be inquisitive about the world, but I haven't thought about how you need societal stability for that. And I think you're really right. I think that's really smart. Yeah, so sorry, go for it.
And like, just how do we make sure that like science is never heretical during those like 2,500 years, right? Like, how do you prevent that? I have no idea, but because you run with this issue where like the people who know how things work might accidentally they get kind of powerful because they're able to just like do things that others aren't, and then with that, there's an incentive to ostracize them, if not just murder them. And so I don't know. It's like you're building a little cell, right? And it's like, yes, the mitochondria is like this really important energy house, but you have to make sure that the cell wall works, because if the cell wall doesn't work, then like everything's shot. So like, what's the cell wall that sort of surrounds your little group of cluster of scientists? Also, after you read Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, if you haven't read the Foundation series, then definitely read the Foundation series, because like, yeah, that right in the spirit of the question.